welcome back to the Still Soul mental health space. I'm happy that you're here. Very happy that you're here. Thanks for joining me. All right, so today we're gonna have a suicide conversation, and in keeping with the theme of what we've been talking about for the last couple of weeks, we'll be focusing on men and suicidality as the title of this video suggests. This week has been busy, so I didn't get to really dive into the kind of research and refreshing that I wanted to do for this topic. However, I have an article here that I will be referencing throughout this video. And of course, I will link that article below so that you can do your own reading. I think it's a pretty good article, and it can kind of guide this conversation a bit. So let's get into it. So this article is from the British Columbia Medical Journal, and it speaks on the silent epidemic of male suicide. So so we know that based on statistics and stuff, male suicide rates are higher than women's suicide rates worldwide. This is not to be confused with the attempts of suicide, which are actually higher in women than men. And it's higher in men, as in the actual suicide. It's higher in men because men tend to use, based on like research and stuff, men tend to use more fatal methods of suicide. So this article by Dr. Dan Bilsker and Jennifer White, it really talks about the high incidence and the contribution of the substantial contribution to men's mortality that suicide has, and the silence around this epidemic, as they put it. Of course, their focus was kind of more in Canada and British Columbia. However, I think this information can be looked at even in our, and when I say our, I mean like as a Jamaican or whatever country you're listening from. You can look at it and kind of compare what happens in your own country when it comes to male suicide. To be quite honest with you, I don't hear a lot. Okay, so in Jamaica, when I hear of male suicide, especially in the recent years, it has more been along the lines of murder-suicides. And with certain it's not high profile careers, or so like, alright, you hear of like police officers or soldiers being murder suicides. That was like a recent thing over the last couple of years. There may be other men from other professions in other fields who may have done that. The recent one that I shared with the young man who left his two brothers, he was a soldier. Others that I've read recently. I can't recall any others that I've read recently from men. Unfortunately, the recent incidents of suicide I can remember, they have to do with children, teenagers. But that's a different category that we'll talk about some other time. So yeah, Dr. Bilsker and Dr. White speaks about the widespread effect of suicide on men, and the fact that there is not a lot of information out there, not a lot of public awareness out there. There's not a lot of explanatory frameworks out there, stuff to explain why men die by suicide at such a higher rate than women. And I mean, this kind of thing goes back to the fact that, generally speaking, as a whole, men's mental health tends to be in the shadows when it comes to public awareness. And men's suicide rate is no different, which is an issue because of how high the rates are in men. Also, she speaks about the fact that she and he, both of them, speak about the fact that there aren't a lot of preventative strategies out there to combat suicidality and men. And that is true. Especially in this context, in like a Jamaican context too. Just like generally speaking, there isn't a lot of like preventative measures for suicidality or combating suicide. And like I mentioned before, men's suicidality is no different. So the article speaks about the silence surrounding suicide among men as being striking and a cause for concern, especially when there are studies and there's evidence to show that, especially in Western countries, men are consistently dying by suicide at higher rates than women. So it's like I mentioned before, the silence that goes with the numbers just don't add up, because this is a thing that is happening consistently. However, nobody is talking about it enough. There isn't like a focus placed on the fact that, okay, this is a problem among men and we need to address it. We need to figure out why it is that more men are choosing to end their lives more than women, and successfully doing so, and why is it that these numbers are so high in comparison to women. Another thing that they mention is the fact that where there are preventative efforts or policies, there are very few that specifically target male suicide, that specifically target what is unique to men, the kind of issues and the kind of causality that will surround. Is that a word? Is that a word? Causality. I've never heard that somewhere in school. But yeah, what the kind of things that would cause men specifically to commit suicide. There isn't anything specific for men. No treatment, no preventative measures, no action campaigns or workshops or whatever that are targeting specifically men. If there are any preventative measures or if there are any campaigns, it's like on a very wide or very general scale, if that makes sense. And when you think about the differences in how men and women deal with their mental health issues and the kind of triggers that may occur most the kind of things that may be more triggering for men than for women, you can't really slap a blanket solution over the situation. Granted, having like a general, guys, if the light is changing, it's afternoon and the sun is going down. So I'm trying to get this out before it goes completely dark. But yeah, so the kind of it's good to have like general preventative measures and general information and general things out there to deal with suicide on a whole. But when it comes to dealing with male suicidality, there has to be something specific, obviously. I can't think of anything in Jamaica right now that speaks specifically to men and suicide. I don't think there are any campaigns right now with the Ministry of Health. I probably have to get that information. I'll ask somebody if they're doing anything specifically about like, male suicide. But what the writers say in this article, it makes sense because you have to consider, what they go through and how it can be dealt with in that very specific way. Of course, the fact that men are very reluctant to seek help for suicide-related concerns and the ever-present stigma associated with mental health problems in general, and then specifically with men, it's not really surprising. It shouldn't be surprising that suicide among men is largely invisible. And I'm quoting directly from the article. It's sad, but it's true. It's sad, but it's true. All these barriers to awareness, public awareness, to support, to information, education. It's something that has to be addressed in our society, something that has to be addressed in our culture before we can have men who are more willing to speak about their struggles in a very open way. Yes, you may have one or two who will come out and talk about it, and they may have weighed the costs. Last week I had my husband on here and he spoke about it. He spoke about his own issues with mental health, and he mentioned, having, struggled with suicide ideation, and that's not a very easy thing to do, but having one or two persons to speak about their issues and to come out and seek that kind of help, yes, it's great, but you want to create the kind of society and the kind of space that will encourage men to seek the help that they need. With suicide-related issues or just general mental health. So there are some stats here that I would like to share. There's some general stats and there's some specific stats. I am going to look at the general statistics, and you can take a look at the article on a whole to see the more specific statistics, and it's more specific to like North America, so that's why I'm kind of not going to talk about it, but yeah. So surprise, men have a shockingly higher rate of death by suicide compared with women. And then across all countries reporting for the data, except China and India, males show a suicide rate that is 3.0 to 7.5 times that of women. That's high. Specifically in Canada, the male suicide rate is about 3 times that of women. The male suicide rate increases fairly steadily with age, peaking in the late 40s, then falling significantly and rising again in the 80s. That's a very interesting thing though, the fact that when they get to their late 40s, the suicide rate is higher, and then it kind of falls off, and then when you get to like 80, 20, it gets high again. And I feel it has to do with like changes that happen in life. 40. That's interesting. Comment below what you think the because of, those specific peak times could be. That's a very interesting thing. Obviously, I'm going to revisit this topic. There are a couple topics that I've done on this channel that I need to revisit. This is one of them. So yeah, let's call it like an introduction to male suicidality. Right. Generally speaking, male suicide rates are greater than female rates at all ages and substantially greater across most of the lifespan. And we talked about this before, where the rates are higher. There are studies to show that the rates are higher in men than women. Alright, so let's talk about what men who are at the point of suicidal action, what are they experiencing? How do they feel? What are their signs or symptoms? And according to the study, men who reach that point, they are more hopeless. They're more clearly resolved to die. They're more likely to be intoxicated and thus more disinhibited. So there are no restrictions. They're just mentally, they're just like, yeah, ready. They're more willing to carry out actions that might leave them injured or disfigured. Remember earlier when I said that men are more likely to use more lethal methods than women? Well, actually, in this study, it shows that it spoke about the fact that men are more likely to choose methods of high lethality, a contributing factor to why suicide rates are higher in men than women. So firearms is one of those popular things that men tend to use, to do the act. So another thing that men who reach the point of suicide action feel, they are more unconcerned with consequences because of a high risk-taking orientation. So I guess generally speaking, men are more likely to take greater risk or higher risk than women, and so in a case like this, unfortunately, they'll have a stronger resolve to get the deed done and get it done. Point blank period. And then there's also more likely to have a greater capacity to enact lethal self-injury, which we talked about. And a study of suicide attempts in older men and women showed that men were more intent upon dying and moved more quickly and decisively from considering suicide to acting upon the ideation. The study noted our findings suggest that factors responsible for the increased suicide rate in older men operate largely during the suicidal crisis itself. Once a depressed older man develops serious suicidal intent, he tends to realize it with little hesitation. Yeah, so like I said before, men are more decisive. They're more, straight to the point, which in this case means that their methods are oftentimes more successful than that of women. Women being notoriously indecisive in many things, including this. Alright, so this article covers a lot of different things in as it pertains to men's suicidality, and you can take a look at it and glance through, read through if you're interested in that kind of thing. And yeah, so I'm gonna end the video right here. It was a little bit more of a chit-chat thing, which is not how I pictured doing the video, but I also did not want to not post that video, if that makes sense. I think next time in cases like this, I'm probably going to do like a live. Yeah, I'll probably do that, more interaction and stuff. But yeah, if you found this video informative and if you got a chance to read the article, please let me know below. Let's talk about the article. Let's talk about suicidality. Do you find that if you're in Jamaica, do you find that there are more instances of male suicide than that of women? If you're in another country, you can let me know as well. What do the numbers look like for men than for women? Don't forget to like this video. Like this video, please. I really appreciate it. Also, thank you for the love for the last video. If you have not watched it, I interviewed my husband on his experiences with mental health, and you can, I'll link it up here and you can just check it out. Like the video, comment of course, and subscribe if you haven't. I would love to get to 100 subscribers before 2023, and I know that you guys can help me to make that number. It's an easy number, like 100 subscribers. We can make it, right? So if you're subscribed, grab a friend or 5 and have them subscribe as well. We're trying to grow this community and really be more informed and aware when it comes to our mental health. So thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in